Okay. Tuesday edition of the After Show. Got Wink and Justice with you. Wink over here on the East Coast.
And Justice on the West Coast of the contiguous United States of America. It's Red Sky morning, Wink. There's a red sky on the horizon.
Heck yeah.
Somewhere in the world. And it always means there is a storm a-brewing.
Exactly.
Ooh, or maybe the storms are already quite steeped, as they say. But we'll elaborate on that in a moment. But first, we have to know how the weather is, and more importantly, how are you, Wink?
Not bad. Not bad. It is sunny and 63, going up to about 71, 72, so it's going to be just a nice October day, no question about it. Drop dead gorgeous out there. Sunny, blue sky. Can't beat it. I got to pinch myself because this doesn't normally happen up this way. Mind to get in the chat. Just go to netrootsradio.com. Scroll down the bottom of the page, and on the right-hand side of the bottom of the page, there is a link to the chat. So click that. Join us there.
And because the interest on the Soros checks that have not been delivered in the last 40 years are also, I think they're in escrow, Wink. They're being held up too. We're not getting even the interest on those Soros checks that have not been delivered to us for the last 45 years. And so we're doing something that I never thought we would ever do when we started this way back, Wink. And that's beg.
Yeah.
And that's what we're doing because Resistance Radio, the only way to stay under the radar so they don't catch you is to pay the bills.
Exactly right.
You don't pay the bills, you're right on their radar.
Yep.
And it's because of your generosity, truly, all kidding aside, that we were able to pay those bills.
Yep.
And Resistance Radio is then beaming 24/7, 365. So thank you very much. And thank you, Wink. You posted some of our after show pods.
Yep.
Raw data file can be had normally. And look, we're citizen journalists when it really gets down to it. So, sometimes what they call real life intrudes. How dare it? How dare it? But regardless, thank you for that. But the raw data file can be had shortly after the show by way of Spreaker, and then the perfected daily file, the PDF, is posted later on Podbean, iTunes, TuneIn, Stitcher, and wherever fine podcasts can be found.
Exactly.
Well, Wink, here along the banks of the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon, they're saying it's 30 degrees. I was outside. I think it. I don't see any frost on the ground.
Right.
Tomatoes are doing fine. When I see these temps, I should have. Well, I did close the. I have a pergola.
It's a bit nippy.
I have a pergola where I'm growing. Where I have my fairly large garden, and so I closed that last night because it will sort of trap a little bit of heat. Keep it a little bit warmer. But now I'm thinking, wow, I better start throwing tarps over my tomatoes. I've gone through all this. I'm not going to lose them. Not now. Oh, frightening. And they say it feels like 30, but I was outside. I don't know. To me, it felt more like, 38, 40.
There you go. Yep.
Maybe that's just my wishful thinking. We will be much warmer today than we were yesterday. We're going to go to a high of 73. So you can, if that's much warmer, that means yesterday it was like 66. So, there you go. And looks like we'll be going up to 75 tomorrow. And a steady little incremental climb for the mid-70s, upper 70s. So, through the week. Let's see. The air quality index is good at 34. 0% of precipitation. Give me 10%. Just a little hope. But no. Winds are currently out of the northeast at 5 to 10 miles per hour. All right. So, they are saying a frost advisory. How dare they? Okay. I better take care of that. Well, the low tonight ostensibly is supposed to be at 42. So, thanks for giving me the frost advisory when I was dead asleep. Because it wasn't a frost advisory when I went to bed last night. It wasn't that early either.
Right.
God, how dare they? It's sometimes hard to be a gardener out here, Wink. Sometimes. All right. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they have purchased, and these people live around the world. London is 64 degrees and mostly cloudy. Paris, 59 and mostly cloudy. Rome is 73 and clear. Kiev, 54 and clear. Kabul, 81 and clear. Sounds like balmy weather to me, Wing.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Hong Kong is 88 and clear. Tokyo is 70 and overcast. Sydney, Australia is 63 and clear. San Francisco, California is 54 degrees Fahrenheit and partly cloudy. And New York is 68 degrees Fahrenheit and mostly cloudy. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they have purchased, and these people live around the world. Oh, boy. Well, we're going to do a story about Trump. He just can't leave Puerto Rico alone. Brown people are just, what is it with this guy? I don't know. It's almost like he's a white supremacist. Oh, boy.
I think he sees the opportunity to have his own island right there in Puerto Rico. And,
I think what we speculated yesterday about, getting rid of the indigenous pests.
Yep.
Terraforming, the island to your own wishes.
Yep.
And every real estate magnate knows that it's better to, develop property and then turn it over when it's vacant.
Exactly.
You really don't want tenants on the property when you're trying to develop it. They're just, they're in the way, especially with all these crazy regulations. If it wasn't for government regulations, the smoke detector that was screaming wildly when Paddock was, shooting these weapons, there was so much gun smoke, it caused the smoke detectors to go off. And that's how the cops were actually able to locate the actual room. They kind of figured out, but But if it wasn't for those regulations, the cops wouldn't have been able to find them, when they did. And that just means we have a loss of freedom now, Wink, because of that.
Yeah, yep.
Regulations are intruding upon, the good work of regular guys like that guy. That's the other one. I always love this, too. All the gun shop owners that sold the guy his guns, they all said he just was like a regular guy. And I suppose, if you yourself see nothing wrong with having 60, 70 weapons, plus some bomb-making chemicals, I guess he would seem like a regular guy to you, wouldn't he?
Yeah.
Oh, boy. I don't want to be a regular guy, Wink. I am not a regular guy. I'm an exceptional guy. Jesus Christ. I never want to be a regular guy if this is what regular guys are.
Yeah.
And it is kind of cracking me up. I mean, have like journalists never gone to a hotel before? Have they never had like I don't know. Maybe I'm being a little bit too stereotypical, and I hope this isn't misogynist. But I got to tell you, I've only had a couple of girlfriends and no wives who, when we traveled, didn't take less than 10 pieces of luggage.
There you go. Yep.
I had 2 girlfriends that they were able to go with 3. So the idea that this guy somehow, was able to get this arsenal up to his room and no one noticed and everybody finds that shocking. And then also, the guy got in there on Thursday. He's not bringing everything up at once anyway. And I know just from being a hotelier and innkeeper, people make purchases all the time and they bring stuff up and, I guess that looks like a violin case. Maybe there's a machine gun in it. I only mention that because we did have a lot of classical musicians and jazz musicians that would come in through town and play at the various, upscale venues. And they would have like their cello cases. And you're wondering, wow, could there a .50 caliber be hidden in there?
Yeah.
Could it?
Yep.
Could it? So the idea that the hotel wouldn't have noticed someone with, a dozen pieces of luggage. I mean, my God. Jeez. And that's just flying. Imagine if you're sailing. If you're on an ocean liner, oh my God, a dozen pieces of luggage is not enough when you're on an ocean liner. I know. I've been there. I can live with probably, like one of these little shaving kits. Because I could fit, a few pieces of underwear in there, some socks. I don't know. Maybe I'm a little bit more refined now. I need to have, a couple of clean shirts and then color coordinated slacks and stuff. You can't have just one pair of slacks.
Right.
Oh, God. I remember when I like finally relented and decided I was going to take another pair of shoes. You take one pair of shoes. What do you need two pairs of shoes for? No, I don't know. I take a few pair because you never know what might happen. Got to be prepared. Oh boy, Wake. So, it's Chris Reeves Day today. We're going to visit with Chris Reeves, and we have some fantastic news if you haven't heard already. It was announced yesterday by Navajo. What is that news? Oh, we're going to give you some fantastic new developments in the cosmos of Daily Co's. Yes, indeed. So why don't I give folks an inkling of what we will be attending to today, because it's 13 after the hour. We can't dally any longer. Okay, well, as I mentioned earlier, Trump again blames Puerto Ricans for not helping in the aid effort. This time based on a right-wing fake news report that the Teamsters are on strike. This is what the right wing does, Wing. It's almost like they're Russian assets doing Russian active measures. And if they're not, they're at least doing the dupe part of it.
Exactly.
Remember during Katrina, it's the unions and why do we have to pay why can't we force people to work for less than minimum wage, to do this aid effort here? I don't know if you remember that argument, but there was that, there's a law that says that you can't hire people for less than what was the collective bargaining agreement. And there was a minimum wage, for contractors. I think that was around, $12, $14 an hour. And they wanted to pay people $5 in Louisiana because that's all those Creoles need.
Right.
Really what it was to bring in, Mexicans across the border and pay them less like they're used to. Oh, God. Oh, Equifax says the recent cyber attack may have hit an additional 2.5 million consumers, but that's okay because now all of the 146 million now affected are all in America. They don't have any evidence that anybody else in the world got hit. So don't worry. It's only Americans. 146 million of us, Mike. Now, you take out the little kids, take out a few others that, aren't, don't have social security numbers for any reason, whatever. And that's about it. What's left is about 146 million. Oh my God. That means every one of us, Wink.
Yep.
Okay. Just try to get credit from me on my thing. Just try. I dare any of these Russian or whatever it is that's doing this. Just try. All right. And after the violent police response to its referendum, Catalonia's break from Spain is now a fact. Wow. When they suppress the vote, they bring out the Ninja Turtles, Wink, and they beat the crap out of old people to keep them from voting. Now that's suppressing the vote.
Exactly.
Holy hell.
Exactly.
All right. For the last half, we are visiting with Chris Reeves, also known as Tom Servo 433, for a discussion on how the hell it took so long for him to be tapped, finally, as the Daily Coast staff community outreach organizer.
Yeah.
He is now DCO staff. Well, congratulations, Chris. And the Kansas Supreme Court rules the state schools are illegally underfunded. Yeah. Laws. We don't need no laws. Nothing says sending thoughts and prayers to the victims of Las Vegas than pushing for more guns on college campuses. Did you know yesterday was a 2-year anniversary of the Umpqua Junior College massacre here in Oregon? Huh, interesting. Just kind of like a Jungian synchronicity in a way. And the U.S. Supreme Court today hears oral arguments on whether Wisconsin's electoral maps are the product of an unconstitutional partisan gerrymander. Well, we'll see what Gorsuch has to say about that. I think he gave a speech to a group that, was trying to make sure those maps stay in place and they keep black and brown people from voting. Which is, he doesn't see anything wrong with it, which is exactly what his mom said when she was corrupt at the EPA back in the day. Wow. Doesn't fall far from the tree, doesn't Wink? All that. Plus the Connect Unite Act Daily Co's community calendar. And if you can't tell that there's more on the after show with Wink and Justice, well, there is. And Wink is over there on the East Coast and I'm on the West Coast. And we do this 5 days a week for an hour-ish in this particular specific and very peculiar tear in the fabric of space-time, because who loves you, baby? All right. You know what's always disconcerting, Wink, is like when relatives of ones who sort of fall on the Trump spectrum of things now, right, accuse someone like me of falling for conspiracy theories. And they're still saying that Obama wasn't born in America.
Right. Right. Yep.
Yeah, it's me. Okay. And then the other, at least some of my relatives are honest. The refrain I heard is, I can do this all day. I go, I know. Reason doesn't matter with you guys. Jesus. Yeah, here's a good one. The Democrats are pushing this thing about the silencer bill just because of Las Vegas. There's nothing about it, and it's all fake news that we're making up. So you know what I had to do? I had to get the effing congressional record out and show on the bill. I go, do you guys have any idea? I mean, it's so easy. There's a calendar. There's a schedule. They have to do it in a particular way. Did you guys never watch Schoolhouse Rock?
Indeed.
Unbelievable. But that's okay. Because what I'm left with is when they're in jail for money laundering, treason, et cetera, I can then tell you, I told you so. I don't care. Wow. Am I perpetuating a public feud for some sort of like clicks? Would I do that, Wink?
Hell no.
No. It'd be like a true internecine squabble. I need to hit my bro up about that, see if he'd go for it. I bet he would. Yeah. He got kicked off Drag Race. Yeah, RuPaul's Drag Race got kicked off. He was there. Though there were some touching moments on. I don't want to get too much into that too much. But, I'm recognizing that we have some very strong opinions. And we have I have a tiny forum. He has, I don't know, a little bit bigger one, we'll say. Maybe. Now you know how we had a civil war, Wink. Frightening, isn't it? Yes, it is. Well, for a country 30 miles wide and 100 miles long, or some people say 100 miles wide and 30 miles long, I don't know. It depends on, I guess, how you're looking at it. East, west, north, south. This guy doesn't really care about it. I don't know. Maybe there's not enough Tea Partiers having resort land on the coastline there. Oh, you know what? If you're on that island, you don't get to vote in the federal election. So as far as he's concerned, there's no votes for him there anyway. Why help? What's in it for him? Travis Getty's got a raw story. Donald Trump again complained Puerto Ricans weren't doing enough to assist in relief efforts ahead of his visit to the hurricane-ravaged island. Before leaving for a tour of the U.S. territory, Trump said Puerto Rico was on its way back after Hurricane Maria cut a path of destruction nearly 2 weeks ago, but he asked for more help from the storm victims. You do know what a definition of psychopathy is, Wink, when you're pathological. You know what the definition of pathological is? Lacking empathy. In Texas and Florida, we get an A+, and I'll tell you what, I think we've done just as good in Puerto Rico. And it's actually a much tougher situation because you know why? There's water, big water, large ocean, water. Don't you listen to him, Dan. He's the devil, not a man. He spreads the burning sand with water. This guy is not of this world, Wink. I'm telling you, there's some circuitry underneath that weird mop of whatever comb over hair.
Yeah.
You got to peel back the scalp, and there's circuitry there. That's not a human being. I'm telling you.
Yeah, could be.
We know there'll be no differentiation in weight. And you know that's how the church determined that there was a soul, because when you died, you know, there was a discernible lessening of weight, and that was the weight of your soul leaving your body. Bet you didn't know about that. Yep, we've come a long way, fella. A long way. Okay, then I love this. Trump called out truckers in Puerto Rico because they're not helped well enough, which may have been based on false reports from right-wing blogs that the island's Teamsters union had gone on strike. Russian active measures. We need truck drivers, Trump said. We need drivers to start driving trucks. We have to do that, so at a local level, they have to give us more help. I will tell you, the first responders, the military, FEMA, have done an incredible job in Puerto Rico, except 3-star general said, you sent him there with not enough men, not enough food, not enough water, not enough trucks. Okay. You tell that I'm angry at the fellow? Oh, boy, oh, boy, oh, boy. All right. Yeah, I remember back in the day when these credit card companies were amassing all this data, and I remember arguing, you know, like, isn't this fundamentally, you know, unconstitutional? I thought they were supposed to, like, have records of all of our data. The reason we have Social Security numbers, I mean, the problem, and we want Social Security, Wink.
Oh, hell yeah.
But the argument during the Roosevelt administration is that the issuing of a number for every American goes down a path that we don't want to go down. It hinders free movement. We can keep track of everybody. And now it's like, wow, keep track of everybody. That's the key. Well, actually, what the key is that we are the product and they sell our information back and forth. And I don't know. I guess maybe somebody got confused about the repackaging and figured out that they were buying the same stuff back that they had sold before. What? This costs more, and this is the same stuff I sold you. And they all say, yeah, that's the way the free market works, sucker. Okay, U.S. This is out of Reuters. By Sweta Singh. U.S. credit reporting firm Equifax Inc. said about 2.5 million additional U.S. consumers may have been impacted by a cyber attack at the company last month. Equifax disclosed last month that personal details of up to 143 million U.S. consumers were accessed by hackers between mid-May and July in one of the largest data breaches in United States history. Cybersecurity firm Mandiant, which did the forensic review, also concluded there was no evidence the attackers had accessed databases located outside of the United States. So I think what that's saying is that all those like rich people are hiding money in, the islands.
Yeah. Yep.
Don't have to worry about it. Or if they got money in Cyprus at Wilbur's Bank, don't even worry about it. We didn't access any of those, so don't worry about that. But they know how you vote, Wink. They know what you read or don't read.
Oh, yeah.
They know what your interests are, and they can target you right and left. Probably more right. That's how they work. I'm telling you. I don't know what it is about them. I get these. I call them Russian porn bots because I'll say something out there that gets a bit of a response, and then I have like all these like obvious fake accounts with busty blonde women from Slavic countries liking it or making some sort of comment like I don't know, it's a benign comment, and it's all machine generated. It's so obvious.
Yep.
I'm thinking, what is it about me that they think that that's going to cause me to respond and click on it? They ought to know I'm an American. I don't relegate it to just busty blondes. Okay. Sometimes svelte, equine length type dancer brunettes. Sometimes that's nice. Or others, etc., etc., etc. I'm an American. If you took if you had pictures of all my girlfriends, Wink, none of them look alike. Though I do have relatives that look like every wife is like a younger version of the Barbie doll they had married before. I don't know what's.
Yeah.
I don't know what's up with that. Okay, Madrid's decision to use force to thwart the latest independence votes in Catalonia is looking like a disaster. Really. Alan Pike out of Think Progress. Hundreds were injured Sunday across Catalonia when national police forces used rubber bullets and truncheons to prevent citizens from voting in a referendum on the northeastern region's potential secession from Spain's uneasy political union. Now, there's a lot of divergent issues in here, Wink, because we do know that Putin wants division. He wants secession, and anybody in the EU, he'd like to have them break up in whatever fashion they can. But Catalonia's push for secession does predate Putin. However meager and minor it might have been. It's not something that just arose necessarily from Russia's interests. But I don't think Putin's very unhappy about this.
Right.
Which doesn't mean that I'm unhappy about it because of Putin. Okay. Being in the region, I don't know. There's a part of me that says, make it all Spain. And so I like that. But, I understand that these regions have we have no cultural memory here, Wink, in America. I mean, in these areas, people have such a long memory. I mean, many generations, much more than the existence of the United States, and it's so recent in their understanding of it, and we don't take that into account very much. Well, Rajoy is the guy running Spain, and he had set these police forces out. And there's some just really brutal video clips, from phones and whatnot of these guys. It's just astounding. And the way they look with their Ninja Turtle SWAT team outfits with the helmets and the masks and the body armor, and they're carrying big batons and beating the crap out of old people and young people, because those were the demographic that they figured would be voting for secession. So free and fair elections, I guess, huh? And they didn't have enough time to gerrymander and suppress the vote that way, so they had to go out in actual polling places and beat the crap out of people to keep them from voting. The cops! Didn't look well. All right, so links are duly provided in the show notes. So let's get to our Jim Hightower break. We'll come back, go through the Connect, Unite, Act Daily Codes community calendar, and congratulate Chris Reeves on his new position. You are listening to the After Show on Netroots Radio with Lincoln Justice, and we will be right back.
You know what's wrong with American politics? It's that there just aren't enough ways for giant corporations and mega-rich political donors to funnel their big bucks into our elections and buy our government. At least that's what Donald Trump, the Republican Party, and a devious group of right-wing political pastors are saying. And, of course, they've got a diabolical fix for this, quote, problem. Their scheme is to turn tax-exempt, far-right churches into gushing sewers of political money, secretly channeling unlimited amounts of cash from corporations and right-wing extremists through the churches into the campaigns of politicians who'll do their bidding. They don't admit this, of course, instead wrapping their scheme in the pious rhetoric of religious freedom. Their point of attack is the Johnson Amendment, a 1954 law passed by LBJ that prohibits tax-exempt charities, including churches, from endorsing candidates, funding campaigns, and directly engaging in politics. The Alliance Defending Freedom, an extremist Christian operation pushing repeal of Johnson's amendment, asserts that banning churches from overt political campaigning lets the IRS, quote, tell pastors what they can and cannot preach. Clever, but totally dishonest. First, the issue is not whether the government can tell church groups what to say. It can't. But whether taxpayers should subsidize a church group's electioneering views and activities. Second, and most diabolical, repealing the Johnson ban would turn these churches into holy temples of dark money. Special interest funders would rush to these political, quote, charities, not only because the churches would be super-secret super PACs, but churches are tax-exempt, meaning the donors would also be blessed with a tax deduction for their corrupting campaign contributions. This is Jim Hightower saying taxpayers would be underwriting the corruption of American politics. How ungodly is that?
Need an antidote to the progressive blues? Want some good news about how grassroots folks are rebelling against the corporate powers and winning? Well, here's an easy-to-swallow pill for you, the Hightower Lowdown. Hightower's monthly newsletter will give you the lowdown, even as it lifts you up. It's 4 pages a month, jam-packed with facts you can use, actions you can take, and Jim's own Texas humor, all for only $15 a year. To become a lowdowner, go to hightowerlowdown.org.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
We're back.
And indeed, we are back. And thank you for sticking with us. This is the After Show with Lincoln Justice. Justice here along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon. On the West Coast, Wink is in upstate New York, 21 on the East Coast. Chris Reeves is in the vast plains of Kansas in the Midwest of the interior United States. And our crew are the ethereal creatures who reside in the clouds out whose advanced intergalactic technical abilities allow Netroots Radio, and thus by extension the after show, to span the globe, the solar system, and beyond. Oh, little station note, still working on the little software glitch that we have here so that I can monitor audio levels in real time, which is always nice when you're running a radio station. So there ought to be a quicker way to communicate, but I don't know. They choose email instead of chat, so that's what I'm stuck with, folks. So I think we've done this enough that we're pretty close on what those levels could be. So if you're getting blasted out, let me know in on social media, and I'll attend to it promptly. Okay, today's Connect, Unite, Act Daily Co's community calendar is facilitated by Eric Lewis, the great cartoonist, and he opens up actually about other Mona Lisa type paintings in the studio of Da Vinci that we don't know about necessarily. And some of them might be quite risque. They are. So, okay. You can go look at that. That's quite interesting. Events currently scheduled as a tentative dinner event in the city to welcome T. Burchard to the Bay Area. Cosme El Navajo, if you'd like to attend. They already have quite a few that have confirmed. It'll be a November date, and the location and time to be determined. And that is your Connect, Unite, Act Daily Coast community calendar for the 3rd of October of 2017 still. Okay. Yeah, I always hate waking up in the morning asking somebody, what's the date? They tell you, and then you go, what's the year? Like Skynet's about ready to catch up with you. So, which it is. Speaking of Skynet catching up with you, welcome, Chris. I don't know what that means. Let's start off with hearty congratulations to your new appointment as Daily Coast Community Outreach Organizer. Let me read. I think that this is. There it is. Announcing Chris Reeves. Navajo put this up yesterday, close to 10 o'clock. So I am thoroughly pleased to announce that Chris Reeves has been hired as the newest member of our Daily Coast staff. He has accepted the position of Daily Coast Community Outreach Organizer. Chris will assist with developing, supporting, and facilitating connections between state, national figures, entities, and Daily Coast community members. And his efforts will be key to expanding the site's reach and building a growing, politically engaged community involved in real-world activism. Chris will respond to and help Daily Coast members find or build local resources addressing their political needs. Well, how are you going to do that?
Boy, it's a big task, isn't it?
It is.
Well, we have lots of Daily Coast groups all around the country, and a lot of them want to find new and better ways to get involved and how they can act. And there's been a real rise of groups like, PSN and Indivisible and those. And what we want to do is start working with our local groups. We have quite a few that are active and some that are inactive, and really start getting them actively involved in things that they can do as far as on-the-ground activism. We also want to increase the level of local reporting from where they are, so we can find out more of what's going on in those states. And we're going to try and bring some direction to the community. We talk about Connect, Unite, Act as an idea. Well, we've been connecting a lot of people. Now we got to figure out how to unite them together in activities that are good for their community, good for their causes, and then provide them some resource at Daily Coast that helps them promote what they're doing. So I think that's the big goal. How do we take what we have and make it even better?
Now, will this strategy involve partnering in some way with county Democratic organizations, or is that going to be part of a party thing or wholly independent of that?
No,
I don't know. I'm just.
Yeah, that's going to be.
I'm just brainstorming. I don't mean to make you pin you down now when it's probably still.
No. There's going to be a little bit about both. I mean, but
okay.
You know, I mean, some activities do involve the party, and some activities don't involve the party, and I think that's what activism really is. There's of course going to be a lot about how do we help get people elected. But in some cases, some causes may not be, party specific. We may have a cause like water in
right.
Flint, Michigan. Well, that should not be a party issue. That should be a nonpartisan. Everybody wants safe drinking water. Or we may have environmental issues that yes, they are democratic, but they don't have to involve the Democratic Party to believe in the idea of, hey, let's promote, safe environment, So I think it depends on whether or not the issue is based around a goal of issue-based activism or a goal of an election. And I think we're going to have to mix the two together to really give people things that they gravitate to. Not everybody gravitates to an issue or a candidate, but they might to one or the other. And if you give them the opportunity to find what they do connect with, you can help motivate them and get them involved.
Well, not that the invitation would ever be accepted, but would it possibly include, say, like in my district, I have the unfortunate reality of having Greg Walden as my representative in Blue Oregon. And I got one of the most red guys in the U.S. legislature. And, but in some of these concerns, I mean, it seems appropriate to invite the local representative, whether, county, state, or national to hear your redress, I suppose. Is that going to be part of that as well? Would we invite the other side? I guess we'd have to. I mean, does that make sense?
I think there's going to be some of that.
Because, before we even mentioned Flint, that was something that came up. I just seemed so obvious, and it obliterates party lines. It should obliterate political ideology. And so I hope. Well, congratulations. That's great. And now they said hired.
Yes.
Okay. Well, that's
yep.
quite.
So that I will be actual staff. I am actual staff now. So this is a full-time gig for me now. This isn't, a hobby or anything I'm just doing because I care about the cause. This is one where literally my job is to now help facilitate how we make these groups work. And so I'm going to throw everything I have at this.
So let me ask something. Maybe this is personal, or I don't know. Maybe, these are all decisions that still have to be made. Do you have to give up your DNC committee member or any Kansas Democratic Party stuff to do this?
Nope. Thankfully, no. And that's something that, we've been talking about this for a while. It's something I had talked to members of the DNC and those about. I'm not any of those kind of things. People are free to work within the Democratic infrastructure. We have a lot of people on the DNC who do. I think this actually helps make the two work together a lot easier, because one of the things that we want to do is facilitate some transparency between the national party and the local groups, and the local parties and the local groups. And I think if we have that kind of bridge, that's the way that I look at this. This is a chance to get that bridge out there where we can say, hey, you need to know something or you want to know something. We can help you find it.
Okay. Well, congratulations. I just see it as a lot of work. And if anyone was positioned to be able to accomplish it would be you. So and I mention this because you kind of have the momentum going. I mean, you've been juggling a lot, and this seems to be an incorporation of all that you've been doing here. So in one nice little neat package. So congratulations.
Right.
All right. So let's talk about now. I called it the Supreme Court in Kansas ruled the state schools are illegally underfunded, but you said constitutionally underfunded in your diary. Does that mean that the constitutional requirement was not met? Am I calling it illegally in a true sense? Is it illegal, or is it just a violation of a prior decision, which I always thought was illegal if you violated it? So what's up? We kind of went through this before, and they're just they being Brownback and his group of fellow thinkers don't care what the Supreme Court says, and they can get funding or not. But this issue just seems like it goes on and on and on.
Yeah. Well. So, okay, the court ruled that the solution that they came up with last summer was unconstitutionally underfunded. So the Kansas Constitution has a requirement for adequacy. That is, that the educational program has to be adequate for students attending. Now, in the case of the Supreme Court ruling, they found that the solution that the state legislature and the governor went along with, which was one that many Democrats did not go along with. Remember, Republicans have a supermajority here.
Right.
Was found to be unconstitutionally underfunded. Not enough money there. Now, they've given the state legislature until April 30th to come up with a solution. But for now, it's going
next spring. Next you're talking about.
Okay. So by next school year, they have to have a new plan in effect. And we'll see how that comes together. And I am, I'm trying to think of the word I want to use. I am not necessarily confident. I guess this is the best way I can say. I'm not necessarily confident that the governor is interested in coming up with solutions.
Right.
And that's because Sam Brownback will be gone. He's leaving for D.C. And Jeff Collier, who as lieutenant governor, is running for governor. So almost any plan that would come about that would actually satisfy this would require one word: taxes. And this is why everybody tried to do something this year so it wouldn't be an issue next year. Well, now next year we're going to have to be debating taxes. And that's going to be interesting.
Okay. So now in the diary, you pointed out that Collier, pronounce his name for me. I'm sorry. Collier.
Collier. Actually, I need to go back and correct that because autocorrect rejuggled his name because I had too many people in my address book who are spelled one way or the other.
Right.
It's actually Colyer. And thank you for reminding me of that.
Now he is pretty much. It sounds like he's not going to be bringing this up very much because it could damage him in the rural districts. Now, I even in my anti-tax relatives who live in deep red rural districts always bemoan when they lose a school.
Mm-hmm.
Is this going to fly? I mean, do people? I mean, I'm always trying to think of terms that would work better than taxes. Because there's some sort of lizard brain thing that when people don't like taxes, they don't like taxes at all. Anything that has T and X in it, they just immediately knee-jerk respond. And I'm trying to think of ways that we could get around that. Like, I don't know, can people buy shares in their local schools? Maybe
Well, actually, we do
well, how
that.
about an insurance policy? Maybe people could buy an insurance policy for their schools.
Okay, so, well, you brought up an idea that does come up every now and again, but here's the problem. So what you're talking about is actually done in most ways. And most of the time it's done through local bonds, right?
Yeah. But bonds might as well be taxes in some of these people's brains. At least that's the argument I get.
But now here's where this gets tricky. If you do bonds, what else happens? Well, you end up with communities that are property rich, okay, if you're in one of these communities that's property rich, a bond brings you in significant money because it's based on property tax. If you're in an area that's property poor, then a bond doesn't bring you in very much property tax. You have to really ramp up the bond. Okay. Now, this is where the other leg of the Kansas Constitution comes in. It requires equitable and adequate. Now, the most recent ruling was on adequate, but the prior ruling was on equity. And what that means is, let's say community A raises huge amounts of money. Let's say it's Johnson County or Sedgwick County, Wichita and Kansas City, right?
Right.
And they raise in a lot of money, so their schools are Taj Mahals. But everyone else who has terrible property value can't raise anything, and so their schools are terrible. Well, then what's that? That's inequitable. That means that some students are by default receiving a poor education because their communities are poor. So in order to do that, you have to balance it out across the state. You have to kind of average out how tax money goes and where it gets spent to make sure each student everywhere has a somewhat similar opportunity within reason. You know, you can't offer all the same programs in a tiny school that you do in a large school, but the core programs that they offer should all be as equitable as you can make them in order to provide them opportunities to succeed. Okay. Now, with this adequate ruling that we're inadequate, the problem is you have to raise all the votes. So how do you do that? Well, there's two different proposals that some Republicans have run with, and this shapes the divide between what we call city Republicans and country Republicans. City Republicans want to wipe out a lot of these school districts. They want to just consolidate up schools and do all that. Well, country Republicans sure as heck don't want that, because you do that and their towns blow away. You know, you take away the high school and the town just stops existing. People just move.
Right.
And so there's a real debate on how the heck they move with that. The second problem you run into is if you go the other way, the other Republican solution, which is you say, hey, how about this? We just get rid of administration. There's way too many principals. Maybe all these small schools don't need a principal or superintendent. They can just combine services, right? Well, the problem is that means one principal and superintendent to cover multiple schools at great distances from each other, which is a bit of an issue. But the bigger issue for a lot of people is more complicated. That is, if you only have one principal and one superintendent for multiple schools, what else do you have? Only one school board. And then all of a sudden, the people who make policy decisions based on what happens in those schools start making decisions based on other schools that they may not be as familiar with. So you get school boards that are overly weighted towards some schools in more populated areas versus less populated areas, and you suck the power of the community out of the school board pretty much entirely. And so that's another concern. So how do we make this work? Well, right now, we're not sure how to make it work. Realistically, the problem is that this has become, Kansas has entered into, under Brownback, a payday loan economy. Even though the state can't take out debt, by not paying bills and just saying, well, you know, we're not generating debt, you just get further and further behind. So it gets more and more expensive to catch up.
Right.
And the farther behind we get, the harder and harder it is to ever catch up. And frankly, since this impacts schools, the other problem is by the time you catch up, too many of these kids are already out of school. They graduated through inadequate or underfunded school programs, you know? And then how do you address that? They received an education that by legal definition wasn't adequate or wasn't what it could be. Who's at fault there? What do we do about that? Well, right now we haven't sorted that problem out either. So where does this all shake out? Well, it probably shakes out with a long legislative session next year where people are going to fight over how they get out of there quickly and avoid answering the question. I think that we're probably going to end up with a Band-Aid rather than any sort of solution.
Okay. Is there a way to put a use fee for every ALEC bill that Kobach tries to push through in other states, and maybe they could raise revenue that way?
Maybe we just outsource his service and say they all owe us money.
Every time he passes one, Kansas should get a little royalty.
Alec owes us a fee for all the bills he's...
Exactly. All right, I don't want to go through this too much. I'll just remind folks in our audience and let you know, Chris, my brother was in that morass of 22,000 people watching that concert in Vegas. And so I don't know. I've been shot at, but not with, hundreds and hundreds of rounds. and just, it bugs me thinking about it too much. But Brownback is still pushing a guns on campus, and I saw a little social media thing that you had posted, and I've been kind of on the same jag of this whole thing about thoughts and prayers. If there's any way to avoid an issue, it's thoughts and prayers. When I was a kid in Catholic school, there was this debate. Is it your faith or is it good works? And I don't know, the nuns and priests that I went to school with always encouraged us to do both, So the idea of sending thoughts and prayers is nothing if you're not going to act on it, and you're certainly not going to be hypocritical. So the idea of thoughts and prayers, well, pushing for guns on campus. Is anybody going to have any amount of self-reflection, or is this just they're on their own momentum and they got to get this stuff passed no matter what? Is that going to be the old saw?
Yeah, that's going to be the old saw, but here's the thing. Here's what we really learned out of Vegas and what I've said all along. Human beings are not Jason Bourne. We are not, James Bond. We aren't, superheroes.
Right.
So when gunfire breaks out like crazy, people are not prepared to whip out a gun instantly, take him out, no matter what people say. Now, in this case, the person was firing from an upward window, down into a crowd, so their ability to identify them would have been zero. And if they would have pulled guns to try and stop him, what would have happened is all the quote-unquote good guys would have just shot each other because they would have assumed the other guy was the bad guy. You see what I'm saying?
The reports of gunfire coming from the Mandalay Bay were also reflected off of that pyramid at the Luxor. Right. And my brother said it was really, and he'd been a cop, and he said you couldn't tell where they were coming from. You could see bullets skipping, but even then, that's not any real indication where the ballistics and trajectory is coming from, and you're going by sound. Yep. And he said he was a cop, and he was scared as-less.
Yeah, no, and he had every reason to be. I mean, yeah, it's...
yeah. So guns on campus. I mean, look, yeah, everybody's going to be a hero. Even the Umpqua, which coincidentally was the 2-year anniversary yesterday of that event, the one here out in Oregon, not too far from where I live in Roseburg, that happened in Roseburg. And there were all sorts of kids, students in their 30s and late teens that had guns in those classrooms or outside even. And, in the moment, sometimes, you think it's better not to use them. I think of the Congress lady in Arizona that got, and her husband's an astronaut. I'm just having a brain lock. I apologize. There were people there that could have been heroes, and thankfully they weren't, because they would have actually killed an innocent person upon reflection, So do you think this is going to cause, when it gets to the debate part, it's going to cause a little bit of pause, maybe?
God, I wish, but we Christine Pelosi sent a thing yesterday, and we were talking about it, and a few others joined in. And yesterday was supposed to be the day that Congress heard about repealing the 1934 Act on silencers. Right. To allow people to buy silencers, which would be, by the way, crazy. There is zero need for anybody to have a silencer. If you got to shoot varmints on your farm, they don't need a silencer. Doesn't help you there. They, by the time they hear the sound, they're dead. If you're in a self-defense mode, you don't need a silencer because, in fact, you probably want it to be loud so people around you can hear that something terrible is happening. They're just what again, going back to we aren't James Bond. I mean, right. People are not, wrapping up a silencer and doing Secret Service duty. This is not how this works. We've got to get people out of the mindset that everything is like Rambo on TV and a gun is going to save them. I've got some guy on Twitter who this morning was making comments about how we all need semi-automatics to protect ourselves from bear attacks. And I said, dude, I've lived on a farm. I've been through these states that you've never even been to, and I'm telling you, the amount of bear attacks in America over the last 10 years has been less than 20 total. And you're telling me because of that, you need a semi-automatic weapon. That's crazy.
I don't know. I came across a brown bear on a hiking trek after 10 days. I just had a big walking stick and a tarp, or my big rain poncho.
Well,
that's all I had.
The number of bears. Look, I've seen bears, and the number of bears that will actually attack you. People use these as a mama bear and her cubs. A mama bear and her cub avoid you. They avoid you. They're not charging at you, not unless you provoke them. I mean, I've been in that situation way too frequently.
Chris, it happens in such frequency where in my life now, I live in a pretty rural area, that confrontation with that bear happened back in 1991. I see bears all the time. Wow, I need to have a semi for all the bears I've seen that I haven't seen.
And by the way, a semi-automatic weapon is not the weapon you want with a bear.
No. It's just, we know what it is. It's some sort of weird fetish. I mean, they're really fantasizing about bringing people down. That's what it's all about. And we know it. And it's marketable. And people will buy the product. And I think it just gets right down to that. It doesn't matter about what's happening in society or the impact it may have. If it does or doesn't, it doesn't matter as long as people buy. And this is what's sick about our society. We're going to get out of here, but I just want to make mention of this. People want to buy the guns that guy was using. They've had a run on that. I mean, the stocks it was so instantaneous. The stocks went up because people were already wanting to purchase the guns that guy had. Whoa, I don't know. So we'll have to discuss this. We'll be purity trolls next week about the degradation of our values and ethics as America's next week, Chris. But thank you and congratulations on being a new hire at Daily Coast. That's
thank you.
There's a lot of great ones, and you join a pantheon of them, and that's great. So,
well,
all right. So
see you next week.
See you next week. Okay, folks, we better bug out of here. We got about a minute or so before Hartman comes up. We'll listen to a little bit of Stina Nordenstam's Crime in the interim. And we'll be back here tomorrow, bright and bushy, same time, same station. Continue listening to Netroots Radio 24/7, 365. Why? Well, because who loves you, baby? Okay, Wink. I will see you on the other side.
All right. We're out.